today's question, number one is, it was not for the Peninsular Plateau. Much of the subcontinent's geological history would have been obscure. Discuss. You understand what we mean by obscure? I could add discuss here, or I could add comment here. This is a 20-mark question. So even if you have about 2 pages, that's perfectly fine. 2.5 pages. So it's basically like this. I need to know what will your introduction be, what type of diagram you can draw, the main body, what are the 2-3 subheads on which you will discuss the body, and how will you conclude this. Think about this, then I will start discussing. The first, understand the question. I think this is one common problem most of you have. You don't understand the question. The question is asking you, if Peninsular Plateau is removed, and if we did not have the plateau, lot of history about India's past would not have been known. If we did not have the plateau, if the plateau rocks and the landforms were missing, lot of history of India's past would have been lost. So the idea is you have to emphasize on how the Peninsular Plateau is telling us about the past, which the northern plains and the Himalayas don't tell us. So you must write about how Peninsular Plateau tells us about the past and ancient geological history in a way that northern plains and the northern mountains don't. India has much diverse and much complex geological history. Indian subcontinent has rocks and landforms that belong to Precambrian and Archean times, along with the more recent tertiary and quaternary formations. Okay, then you probably could have a table here. You have Peninsular Plateau, northern mountains, and northern plains. The Peninsular Plateau is an old cratonic block. Northern mountains, these are tertiary fold mountains, origin from about 60-65 million years. The old cratonic block goes back to more than 3 billion years old. And the northern plains barely younger, so about 2 to 3 million years. The Peninsular Plateau is the oldest part of the ancient Gondwana land that broke away since the Mesozoic times. Okay, the Peninsular Plateau was part of, it's the remnant of the ancient Pangaea. Okay, while the Himalayas are sedimentary formations barely 60-65 million years old, the northern plains are deposit accumulations of Pleistocene times. The Peninsular Plateau accounts for much of the geological history. You have a small introduction. You could think of this in a different way, maybe also draw a diagram of India and then show the Himalayas are 65 years old, the northern plains and the plateau are the oldest. You could do that also. And then say it was part of the ancient Gondwana land that broke away. So while the Himalayas are much, much younger, the plateau has the history of the oldest part of India's formations. So this approximately about 3/4 of a page or slightly more than a half of a page. And then you start off by saying, number one, Peninsular Plateau has the oldest rocks. Talk about now the Archean rocks, talk about the Purana rocks, talk about the Gondwana rocks. Peninsular Plateau has the oldest rocks. Then you can discuss about Peninsular Plateau has the oldest mountains belonging to the Precambrian times. So these oldest mountains have preserved some of the features of old geosynclines old geosynclines and the depositions. The plateau has remnants of past volcanism, and associated features. The plateau has Precambrian volcanic features. Okay, if you know about Dalma Hills in parts of Bihar and Chota Nagpur Plateau. Okay, this is one example. Another example of old ancient volcanism is your Cretaceous lava flow. Talk about that. Then you can talk about the plateau has some of the oldest faults and rift valleys. So faults like Narmada fault, okay, or rather start with Damodar fault, talk about Mahanadi fault, you can talk about Jabalpur fault, you can talk about how the Peninsular Plateau has remnants of microcontinents, the Dharwad microcontinent, the Singhbhum microcontinent, it has the Aravali protocontinent remains, which are fused together to form the Peninsular Plateau. Okay, so under 4-5 heads, yes, you can also add, okay, the Peninsular Plateau has evidences of past climate change preserved in its glacial till deposits in Talche. That's it. Now you'll have to divide the answer into 3, 4, 5 heads. If it was not for all of this, we would not know about much of the old history. And then you can move towards the conclusion and say the plateau is an old crustal block, much eroded and denuded, and preserving the harder rocks. The Peninsular Plateau has features of India's erosion surface, using which India's denudation chronology can be reconstructed. Much of the present geological diversity, including the resources of the plateau, are because of the plateau's long old geological history. You added something from the applied aspect. I hope you remember the geological history. Okay. The geological history आपको पता होना चाहिए. The tertiary times, the Mesozoic times, the Paleozoic times, and the Precambrian times. The Mesozoic times, and this is the Quaternary. Quaternary times में Himalayas बना, Quaternary times Northern Plains, Quaternary times includes marine transgression. This also includes Rajmahal Garo Gap formation. So we are discussing how the plateau preserves the old events which are not there on the plains or the mountains. So I'm discussing a question. So tell us how the plateau has features of Precambrian times, Paleozoic times, Mesozoic times. Don't talk much about the tertiary times. Rajmahal, Garo, Gap. बेटा अब ना आपके यूपीएससी में questions are not always very straight questions. Okay, they're asking us about the older history in a different way. Okay, so try this answer now. The question was, if it was not for the Peninsular Plateau of India, much of the subcontinent's geological history would have been obscure. Comment or discuss. Comment or discuss. That's up to you. So introduction, the diagram, the body with 3, 4, 2 or 3 heads, and the conclusion. And the answer towards the significance. So you have seen I've used terms from geography, right? Erosional surface, denudation chronology. Like you're talking about the minerals and the significance linked to Gondwana land. That's how you develop the answer.